Hey everybody, Pete, good morning. It is a new week, a end of a month. There's a lot going on right now. And what we're going to talk about today is I'm getting a lot of feedback from quite a few traders that are beat up right now, where the market kind of rolled over and they're still in their mind, they're still trading the price action that we had in July and August, and especially August, where buying those breakouts just kind of like flew off of your fingertips and the trading was infinitely easier and the confidence level was just through the roof. But there's a downside to that as well, which was if you made bad trades because the whole market was on the upswing and just rocketing pretty much every day, especially for August. If you took some bad trades, if you took some less than obvious trades, the market would come back and bail you out, basically. But we're not in that market condition right now where you might be looking at something that is the same scenario, but it's really not. You might think it's the same scenario, but it's really not. So really what we're seeing right now is we're seeing a lot of false breakouts, and we're seeing a lot of challenging situations where you're really forced to manage the positions, which that's a big thing about what we're talking about in the boot camp right now. Manage the order, work the keyboard. It's a lot more of a stock specific market right now. The market leaders, you actually found, we really haven't spoken about them in a while. We haven't talked about Facebook. We haven't talked about Microsoft. Apple, really, we've been talking about the possibility of it trading down to 100. Tesla really hasn't been that obvious either. And that's because the market conditions have changed. The specific trade ideas have changed. There have been easier trades in other stocks that are quote unquote doing what they're supposed to do. And it looks like today, ironically, we kind of bottomed out a little bit in the short term, and we can start looking for some new longs, and I'll explain that minimum criteria in a second. But if you were still trading those market leaders that were easier and more reliable profits in July and August, you probably got slapped around a little bit, and right now your confidence is probably shattered a little bit. So we're going to take a look at some charts, and we're actually going to go over and see what the minimum criteria is before you even decide to actually trade that stock. Because what ends up coming back is you start to feel like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. Maybe I can't do this. And it's not really that you can't do it if you understand what you're looking at. It's that you just need the discipline to trade the right stocks before you even put the trade on. Because if you're putting trades on the wrong stocks that have lower probability for follow through, you're going to feel like, oh, another losing trade. Oh, another losing trade. Oh, a break even trade. And then you're like, the best I could do is break even. It's the last step that is actually the first step, really, not the last step, it's the first step. It's before you even try and manage the position is, are you in the right trades in the first place? By the way, also, we're having a webinar this Wednesday where I'm going to teach all of this live on Wednesday night, September 30th, excuse me. Click down below and register. I'd love to have you in the webinar. But remember, there's only 500 people available to actually attend the webinar, so you got to make sure that you get in there and register early. So we're going to head over to the charts. We're going to take a look at some opportunity, and we're actually going to start out with Roku. And really, what I want to get across here is you can see the price action here, where it's obvious for a couple of months. Here, where it's obvious for 3 months. Here, where it's now obvious for 4 months. It's during this price action here where it's not obvious, and especially if you want to be a buyer, where it's known as what we call well offered. So if you are a long only buyer type trader, you need at a minimum for your monthly charts to be what we call well bid. And that's where you start to see this kind of explosive follow through that are easier trades. And I keep going back to DocuSign because it's probably one of the most stark examples where you can see months and months and months in a row the stock was what we call well bid, which means higher highs and higher lows. So you shouldn't even be looking to do anything other than buy the stock, which obviously that's the right play here. But then the tape changes. Then the trades into a melted candle. Then it trades into a giant bearish engulfing U-turn. And you can see that here on the weekly chart. So the monthly chart needs to stay well bid. It needs to be obvious. It needs to be obvious in that time frame that you're trading. Now, a lot of traders will come back and say, well, it's easy to see after the fact. I'm saying, no, you need to see it while you're trading. You need to see it prior to putting on the trade. So you need to say, okay, this is what I'm looking at right now. So I feel good. If any pullbacks, breakouts, this is a better case scenario. But then as soon as you start to see this, where the conditions have changed, as soon as you start to see this, where the market from 1 week to the next week to the next week has changed, it's not as easy to trade. Then you go to a stock that we've been trading quite a bit recently, which is Penn. You can see now in that same, let me get this off the screen, in that same period of time, the last 2 months have been very obvious, which have led to easy breakouts, easy follow through. So when you get these signal, I'm not going to go over the signal here, but when you get the signal, you get these explosions for a week, you get explosions for a week, and that makes for easier trading. So really the biggest thing right now is to just really pay attention to before you even put the trade out, because you're judging yourself based on the results, you're judging yourself based on how you manage the position, you're judging yourself based on how hard the trade was to manage. And that stuff is easier when you're in the right trades in the first place. So you really just need to dial back and look at some of the recent trades you made. And from this moment forward, really just say to yourself, am I taking the best ideas, or is the market tough? See, there's also a separation between those two things as well, which a lot of people don't know. And again, especially if you haven't traded professionally before or had a coach or anything like that, sometimes you're not trading well, and sometimes the market's really tough. If you have both of those things hitting at the same time, you're really gonna start to get gray hair, right? So when you recognize the market's tough, you lower your share size, and you can still take stock-specific ideas and find plenty of ideas to trade. When you're not trading well, that's really just that first step of having criteria to say, these are the ideas that I could get the most reliable and predictable winners from, and make sure that those are the only trades that you're in. Don't try and force a trade if it's not obvious, just by lowering your share size. Well, I'm not going to get hurt as much because it's not obvious, but I love trading this stock. If it's not obvious, it's not obvious. We talk about it quite a bit, that if it's hard to find, it's not there. So only look to trade the ones that are super obvious. And I'm going to use Tesla as an example. A lot of people have gotten beat up in Tesla the last few weeks, and even Apple for that matter, because it's just not pulling back and going straight up. It's not going sideways and going straight up. You've had to adapt, and if you haven't been paying attention, you're probably getting hurt. So hopefully just minimum criteria, well bid on the monthly chart, and then look at the weekly chart to see if it's in sync with the monthly chart. Then that makes the day trades and the swing trades a heck of a lot easier. If you find this video helpful, definitely click down and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the webinar. Take care.